Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice podcast, your inside connection to the outdoor legislation. From the Beltway to policy happening your way, we're covering it all. I'm your host, Fred Bird. Join us as we explore public land access, wildlife and fisheries management, Second Amendment rights, the triumphs that shape our nation, the sports we all love, and the stories that fuel our passion for the great outdoors. This is the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. We're talking cats this week. We're going to Colorado. Ballot initiative out there. They're trying to outlaw the hunting, trapping of mountain lions, bobcats, and for whatever reason, they throw Canadian lynx on there for good measure. You can't hunt or trap them anyway, but we're going to get into all that. Dan Gates, he joins me from on the ground in Colorado. From Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, CRWM. If you're involved in conservation or you follow anything socially, you've seen Dan, especially in the last few months, his social footprint has just blown up, and for all the right reasons. He's working real hard and bringing people together far and wide out there in Colorado and in places around it. So looking forward to having that conversation with Dan, and then we round the episode out with Barry Snell, assistant manager out there in the West, my colleague, who's going to give you the CSF side of things, and then talk about a great event we've got going on out there in the middle of April. So sit back, relax, let's go. All right, well, welcome into another edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast, the official podcast of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. This week, we're joined by Dan Gates of Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, CRWM. You've seen him all over the socials. The algorithm is pushing Dan to everybody and anybody that gives a rip about what's going on in conservation. Dan, thanks so much for adjusting and being with us today and coming on to talk about some very important items in Colorado and conservation at large.
Thanks a bunch, Fred. Appreciate the opportunity. And we had a little bit of trouble connecting at different levels, but that's what happens when you got two guys that have a lot of stuff in the background that are trying to do digital technology and getting our stuff together. So appreciate the opportunity.
Simple trappers and outdoorsmen. We understand our universe.
Yeah, I'm good with my hands and good with my brain, but putting the two together is like a monkey in a spaceship. So,
well, obviously we wanted to have you on today to talk about much of what you've been talking about to so many people, and it's fantastic that you're seemingly leading the way, or you've become the de facto face of the movement as it concerns the ballot initiative out there in Colorado that sprung up towards the end of last year when it was introduced mid-September. I started noticing you, again, I was joking, but the algorithms I kept seeing this guy with a great beard showing up. I said, well, I got to listen to this fella and start, unmuting the reels, and he's matching up with what we're doing. So, anyway, fantastic stuff. Working closely with our caucus members and our team staff out there. Before it was Ellery Tucker Williams, before she moved on, and now you're working with Barry Snell. What's the latest and not so greatest on the ballot measure? I know it is what it is. It's going to be on the ballot in November. How are Coloradans, I know the conservation community at large is rallying to this, but in state, they're the only people that can really affect this change. Where are we at, and how is that message being perceived?
Well, and as you said, they brought this up in September of 23 after 4 consecutive years of failures for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission and the General Assembly here at our state capitol. And we beat them back at every time, and they then opted to go to the ballot and to where the general public can vote on this. And while I think there's 26 states that have ballot initiative processes, the people that are in those states fully understand the ramifications or repercussions of letting the general public vote on things that they don't know what the hell they're voting on.
Sure.
Versus other states that are like, what the hell? You let the general public do this? And I think that those are concerning issues of trying to figure out how to not manipulate, but maneuver through that landscape. And so while we challenged every single challenge that we could make through the Supreme Court, the Title Board, the Secretary of State, the opposition now is in full function of getting signatures. They need 124,000 plus signatures to get it on the ballot, and we're in the position to where we are doing somewhat of a decline to sign campaign, try to educate people that might be duped into providing signatures, and so that'll last up until probably around July 5th, which is the deadline for the proponents of the measure, which is cats aren't trophies. I hate to give them any more praise than what they already have, but it's cats aren't trophies. And so they got until July 5th to gather those signatures. And we think that they probably need somewhere around 170, 180,000 to qualify the 124,238 to make sure that they can get those signatures certified. And the signatures have to be certified by August 5th. And then in preparation for when the ballots and the books and everything would be printed before mail-in ballots were sent out on October 5th, with the culmination of the general election happening on November 5th. And so our immediate deadline is July 5th that we're working toward, and we're fundraising, we're outreaching, we're educating, we're conducting seminars and demonstrations and webinars with our supporters and the stakeholders, trying to build up a war chest. But in football terms, and an analogy, I utilize the date of July 5th as the beginning of the playoffs. And if they make it past that, then it's the second game of the playoffs. And then we'll start getting through the divisional rounds and then the conference championships. And then once we get to November 5th, if we're so inclined, that'll be the Super Bowl. The confusing part is we might very well be playing the same team through each one of those divisional rounds and playoffs and the Super Bowl. And but I think we're going to have a pretty good likelihood of kicking their ass the first go around. And if not, then I think the culmination of efforts will come to fruition on November 5th, and we will come out of that victorious, just because of what support we're getting from around the country. This is not a Colorado issue, and I think that I think our side, our stakeholders, our hook and bullet crowd is going to be very pleased, if not impressed, and maybe even surprised at what we have up our sleeve and what we're able to pull out of a hat for a rabbit.
Obviously, there's so many non-resident hunters that flood into Colorado every year and contribute to the local economy through license sales, through expenditures for gas, food, room and board, which ultimately contributes to that state through PR dollars that are all matched at the federal level. It is important, like you said, for everyone to be a stakeholder in this and have a voice. I wonder, though, when you have these referendums, we don't have them here where I live in New Hampshire. I think Maine to the east does. I've never actually seen them on a ballot, but they're for anything like warrant articles that we have in New Hampshire. The ballot can end up being 10 pages long with all this fine print. And truthfully, a lot of people don't take the time to read them beforehand going in, knowing how they're going to vote on these items. Do your ballots, when people actually get in the booth, are they so long that people are either going to pencil whip them or just leave them blank?
No, the thing about in Colorado, and I think some of the other ballot-driven states are the same way, is when they get in there, they're going to see the title of the ballot. And the title will explain the supposed intent, even though there's a smoke and mirrors component to that. It might be even a shell game. And that was one of the contentions that we had when we were fighting through the title board, is we can propose alterations and appeal the title. Well, we can't appeal the measure. You can throw as many things as you wanted to into the measure itself, which is that long, drawn-out process that you're referring to. That will actually be in a book that is sent out to each registered voter that they can either review and purview at their leisure all of the ballot initiatives that would be on there and all of the general election stuff. So it might have a plethora of information pertaining to each individual ballot issue. And the theory is we might have 30 or 40 of the damn things on this ballot, this ballot this coming year. So the people would have the opportunity to read all the language in the measure pertaining to the initiative itself in that blue book. However, when they get to the ballot, it's going to be a one-paragraph deal about the title, and shall the people of Colorado, blah, 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 propose, or accept, and then you would be able to vote no or yes on that one paragraph deal. The reason that's so important for us is because we fought diligently and spent a tremendous amount of money to get trophy hunting pulled out of the title. And so it was still the same intent. It was going to stop all harvest of mountain lions, bobcats, and lynx. But the statutory definition of trophy hunting is still in the measure. And so when the general public goes to the polls and they vote on this, they will be voting on a hunting ban. It's not a trophy hunting ban. It is a hunting ban. It's just that in the measure, trophy hunting is defined as intentionally killing, wounding, stalking, pursuing, or entrapping a mountain lion or a bobcat. And so the caveat to this whole conversation is they are defining what trophy hunting is, but there's not any component of trophy in there. It's hunting. And that's where the general public at all levels that we've been preaching for the course of the last 5 months now needs to understand that once you have a statutory definition of trophy hunting, which, unless you know, Fred, we haven't found it in any state statute anywhere that trophy hunting was defined. There's wanton waste. There might be exceptions for poaching and illegal harvest for different classifications and maturity. But trophy hunting is not defined, and it's damn sure not defined as hunting, intentionally wounding, killing, stalking, pursuing, or entrapping. And so while we've been professing this to be a hunting ban, that's exactly what it is. And this just happens to have mountain lions and bobcats in it now. But because it would be statutory and a definition would be imposed on that, you could throw elk or bighorn sheep or turkeys or anything into that if you were so inclined to, because the precedent was set in statute.
And that's exactly what you hit it right on the head. And that's where I was going with my next line of questioning is, does the general public there get the ramifications of this? Because it is precedent setting. And then you end up in a situation like Oregon with IP3, where they are trying to just get rid of all of it. And it's madly insane.
Yeah, the general public that we're dealing with right now is starting to get it, the stakeholder guys, which people, we're getting a little bit of criticism, a little bit of backlash from some guys. Well, you don't need to be talking to me. You need to be talking to the general public. Well, we will talk to the general public once we have an initiative. Right now, we have a proposed initiative. But there's no sense in talking to the general public except for a little bit of a decline to sign campaign that's been instituted. But talking to the general public now is like, talking to your dog 3 months before hunting season. You can train him, but if you don't have anything to hunt, he just doesn't get the full picture of things until you're out 2 or 3 days into the field and something starts to click. We need to be able to educate the general public, the target audience, when it's closer to election time. What we're concentrating on right now is the uneducated, I would say somewhat ignorant, that doesn't mean stupid, ignorant sportsmen and sportswomen of how this translates into how it could affect them. Because we get all the time. I was just at the Mile High Hunt and Fish Expo over the weekend. We had a booth set up. I was doing seminars and presentations and podcasts. And people would come up and go, hey, Gates, you got to explain this to me. I'm never going to hunt a mountain lion. I really don't care about bobcats. Why does this affect me? And once you tell them the statutory side of it, and then you read into other components of the measure, other restrictions or prohibitions that aren't in the title, but that are in the measure that will be in statute. And when you tell them, do you hunt with dogs? Yeah, I upland bird hunt, or I waterfowl hunt, or I'd like to beagle hunt with for rabbits. You read the dog component in the measure, and you let them see what it actually is.
Right.
Talking about electronic collars, training devices. It would ban that in this capacity because you wouldn't be able to hunt mountain lions or bobcats. But because it's statutory, you can turn around and go back to the public next year, or at least in 26, or maybe even just go run legislative through the General Assembly and run a bill, or maybe approach the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission and say, we don't think electronic devices should be used on dogs for any reason. Look, we already set the precedent when we banned it on mountain lions and bobcats. And people might think that's Black Hawk helicopter theory or tinfoil hat. I can tell you, it's not. It's a chink in the armor. It's a piece of the puzzle. And as they have said, the opposition has said, when they were asked, why go after these two avocational groups as far as lion hunting and bobcat harvest, their statement was, because we're going off after the low-hanging fruit. We will chop the branch off, we will cut the tree down, and we will go into the forest. That was amongst themselves when they said that. And I joke about this, Fred, because They don't want us going into the damn forest, but they're willing to go down and clear cut it now, just as long as they can get rid of everything that has anything to do with something they don't agree with or don't like.
Yeah, for sure. They're not even being secretive about it anymore, which I guess, depending on what part of the country you live, you know this already. And, it's like you said, it is the low hanging fruit. We understand that. And it's the charismatic critters, the furry critters that people just, that Disney effect or how they've been programmed throughout their lives, the cats, the bears, these are things that are just such hot flashpoints for the general public to be like, well, yeah, why do you need to do this? So you're not going to eat them. Of course, we know otherwise. That all of us do that pursue these things. So that's a shallow argument in and of itself. But in New Hampshire, where growing up, it was traditionally very sportsman friendly. Over the last decade or so, it's not. And HSUS and their ilk have come out and done the same thing. It started with the bear houndsmen, always going after the very few licensed trappers that we have in the state. It might be at best 600 licensed trappers, and of those, a portion of us actually go out and run lines. So they're always coming at these people, and the same thing comes up before I was a commissioner in the state. When I was a commissioner on the state, you get the same lines of thought from within our community. I don't hunt bears, so why should I care? Or I don't run beagles. That was a big one. I don't run beagles, and I don't care about hares, snowshoe hares. So why should I care? Why shouldn't you care? Because once they've knocked that domino down, then they are coming for your whitetail hunting. And if you think whitetail hunting is socially acceptable, it is until they get to you. And they say, well, shooting them with guns isn't cool, or shooting them with muzzle loaders is horrible. And then they're going to get to your archery tackle. So no one is safe in this fight. And that our community and guys like you do such a great job of grabbing them by the shoulders. They wake up, because if we don't get it, there's no chance you're touching that 80% in the middle.
No, and that's the biggest thing is the value of the outreach that we've created so far. And most of it is because we were fully prepared prior to this initiative being dropped on September 22nd of 23. We had been in existence for the better part of 6.5 years at that point.
Mm-hmm.
We did what we did at the time before the Polis administration actually took occupancy of the governor's mansion, and before the General Assembly even changed more directionally than what it is now. We've got ample opportunities to fix and correct some of what we believe to be wrongs when it comes to wildlife management, when it comes to hunting and fishing, when it comes to conservation side of things, the natural resource side. But if you don't prepare, it makes it much more difficult. And that analogy I gave you about playoffs and Super Bowl and all the other crap, I mean, it's easily more decipherable to some layman that's not fully understanding what this process even is. This is a long, drawn-out process. It started in September, and we will culminate with it on November 5th through a ton of different levels of ballot initiative processes. There's boxes to be checked, there's T's to be crossed and I's to be dotted, and you have to watch your P's and Q's and all the cliche terms that you've got. But it's a level of preparation, and the opposition has been and is continuing to prepare as we speak in preparation for that same Super Bowl. Now we're going to find out, did we do it right? And we built off the successes and the roadmap and the playbook that we created here? Or did we do it wrong and we were just outgunned? Maybe we were outmaneuvered? I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that there's a really legitimate opportunity for the sportsmen and women throughout the country that are contributing to this campaign to be part of a victory and be part of the solution as a part of the problem and a failure. And, but the opposition is trying to get that middle of the road 80% just as much as what we are. But if we can't get our 10%, how the hell are we going to get any part of the 80? Now, look, I don't have blinders on, and I'm not looking through rose-colored glasses. That 80% is up for grabs. It's up for grabs on both sides, and whoever gets to them first and can convince them, at least on our side, we've got facts and data and statistics and 125 years of conservation success stories to be able to go off of. The antis don't have any of that. They've got lies and deceit and finger pointing and criticisms of game agencies the North American model of science, of species conservation and habitat restoration, that we have all of that. They don't have any of it.
Right.
But they could turn around and lie to a certain amount of the public. When it comes down to it, some people are going to look at it and go, I don't think you should kill wildlife. In specificity at this level, I don't think you should kill mountain lions or bobcats. Well, do you think we should kill deer and elk?
Right.
Yes, that's fine.
Right.
Do you think we should kill pheasants and quail? Yes, that's fine. What our job is to convince that public that lions and bobcats, under management guidelines and objectives, under quotas and harvest and data and studies and statistics, that they're no different than quail and pheasants and deer and elk,
Exactly
or turkeys,
right.
or anything else. And so let's just hypothetically say you got, just like the football field, with all my football analogies, and it's not that I'm obsessed with that, but it's easily transmittable. 10% on our side is from the goal line to the 10-yard line, and 10% on their side is from the goal line to the 10-yard line. However we move the needle into their territory, as far as we can get, or vice versa into ours, that's where people can understand that's the target audience that you need to hit. Now, on the wolf issue that we had here in 2020, that was 1.9%. They moved the needle across our finish line to the 47.5-yard line. We moved ours not near as far as what we needed to. They didn't win. They weren't in our end zone. They never got to the end zone. So it was just a level of middle playing field, and they got barely across the 50-yard line. They didn't get across the finish line. They never scored a touchdown. They never even got a field goal. They went across the 50-yard line very minimally. And here we turn around and didn't push hard enough. I think this time we're going to turn around and push it over, maybe to the 47, maybe to the 45, maybe to the 40. But I wouldn't be surprised if we scored a touchdown and we turn around and sank their ship really, really early in this process. And if we do that, the margin of victory on this will culminate to successful efforts on many other things in Colorado, in the West, and throughout the nation, because they don't like to lose money. And they damn sure don't like to turn around and be made an ass out of.
Yeah, well, they'll
either go somewhere else.
They don't mind spending it, though, either. And their coffers and their pockets are deep, super deep. And so I wonder, what we know, they have a good get out the vote kind of game, that side that tends to be anti-driven. They're well organized. They have a mission. They focus on that mission, and everything else be damned. They're going to do all they can to get the end zone, as you said. So often our side, I don't know if it's a little ego or, we just want to distance ourselves so much, but, what can we copy? Because they're so successful. They really are. What out of their playbook can we use against them? And then sub to that, have you noticed any print, any media ads that they're investing into to the general public, or have they not got there yet?
They're investing in some ads that they've attempted to sway or dupe the public into the illegitimacy or the ineffectiveness of science-based wildlife management.
Wow.
There again, I mean, if you say enough lies enough times, people start to believe it because that's all they see. So if there's no rebuttal, it's easy to say, I'm tired of you driving by that pink house. You've been driving by it. You can't determine where the pink house is. You haven't seen the pink house. All of a sudden, there's a peach house that maybe has a bit of a pink tint to it. Pretty soon, you start to believe that's the pink house.
Yeah.
And I really believe that that's their tactics is smoke and mirrors, lies and deceit, and they capitalize on people not paying attention to things that normally aren't in their wheelhouse. I'm not a nuclear physicist. I don't care about being a nuclear physicist. But if we were going to be told that nuclear physicism is going to be banned and outlawed because of whatever reason, I don't have any knowledge to that effect.
Sure.
Maybe I'd start to believe, what it is or how it is. I think that they're fully capable of extending their campaign in a direction and in a manner that they find that the polls resonate well enough with people that don't pay attention to wildlife unless they see wildlife, or they think that wildlife is being mistreated, abused, or not appropriately managed. And managed, when you get into conservation, as you well know, has to do with an offtake. And to offtake, there has to be a harvest. And for harvest, there has to be a death. And that's the hardest thing that we have to be able to turn around and try to convince people of, that all forms of management the intent of what we do is to pursue and stalk and intentionally kill wildlife. Their definition of trophy hunting is just that, but they say that's trophy hunting. There's the two lies. We don't have to worry about the pink house. We don't have to worry about nuclear physicism. We just worry about the lies on one side and the facts on the other. When we try to cross that line appropriately enough to where we're getting into that level on the other side of the playing field across the finish, the 50-yard line.
There's everything to hate about this. I mean, there's nothing redeemable about it, but the things that stand out to me on the very surface of it is what you've identified as the lack of definition for trophy hunting. And this, I think it's easily correlated to Big Five imports and African hunting, where that has been going on for decades of just programming and saying that word, like you said, the pink house, over and over again, and where you literally have a lion that can be correlated to an African lion. It makes sense. And then you start adding the other cats and the other charismatic predatory species that people unknowingly have been programmed can make that jump. And so it clicks, right? It's just like they've bastardized the word conservation. They've taken that over, and it's their definition of conservation is truly preservation.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so much on us to take that back. And it's a drum we beat here, and you guys do as well. The other part of this that really just gets under my skin, and I've said it before about this bill, is the lynx part. And so ignorant that it should automatically be a disqualifier, because if you don't know, we're gonna clue you in, Dan and I. You can't kill lynx in the lower 48.
Yeah,
and more to the point, they are not endangered. They are the southernmost range of their dispersal. You go over the border to Canada and you can trap them all the live long day. You go up to Alaska and northern reaches of Canada. They're everywhere. Same thing with wolverines. They had this problem with wolverines in Idaho, and they limited all this access for everybody, not just hunters, because of the way they define their means of take. Like if you looked at a wolverine, that was a method of take. So now your snowmobilers, your hikers, your mountain bikers, like this affects people. And here's more of that depth that people just need to understand. And if they just take it for face value, like you said, they're being duped and smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, and I think one of the concerning things to me is the sportsman hook and bullet crowd that I constantly refer to hasn't taken seriously enough, in my opinion, the importance of sustainable wildlife management and how that allows us to continue to chase or pursue our endeavors, whether it's white-tailed deer or turkeys or maybe bighorn sheep or maybe it's Coues deer in Arizona or something. We haven't fought as hard as we prepare to engage in recreation. We haven't instilled the language appropriately in our channels and in our conversations and in our conduits. You know, people tell me all the time, Fred, I don't have time to. You spent 19 hours looking at an application book for different states to figure out where you're going to apply. You don't have 8 hours a year to turn around and put 2 hours here or 2 hours there and write your legislator or write your congressman or turn around and engage in a political rally or a fundraising opportunity for conservation efforts. And I'm not talking about banquets and fundraisers and shotgun shoots. I'm talking dealing with the people. I mean, I'm sitting here, and I'm just going to invite, because this is my wheelhouse, for June 15th on a particular piece of property that nobody really wants to go to, but everybody's being invited to because of wolf interaction. June 15th, 3-4 months ahead of time. We can do a lot if we educate ourselves and engage. But when you don't have time for something, somebody else, while you don't have time, has plenty of time to strategize and scheme to figure out a way to take it away, to bastardize it, to marginalize it. We don't have time to pedestalize it. We don't have time to brand it to where this is who we are, this is what we do. And I see with what we're doing here in Colorado, there's a changing dynamic. There's a changing landscape. We've taken donations in from 50 states, 6 Canadian provinces, 4 foreign countries. The industry itself, I'm talking manufacturers and retailers, the NGO community, individuals. We've taken 85% of our damn money from out of state. Why? Because everybody has an interest in Colorado in some capacity. We had 250 some odd thousand non-residents apply for licenses during this license draw process.
Yeah.
They all had to buy, just to apply, they all had to buy a qualifying license, which is either a turkey license, a fishing license, or a small game combo license. They had to apply with their application fee for each license. Then they had to turn around and purchase preference points if they wanted to for the big three, sheep, goat, and moose. They're putting money into the pot so they can maybe get a license. That's why they're buying into our process of what we're trying to do to promote science-based wildlife management and the North American model and save the two low-hanging fruit, mountain lions and bobcats, so they can continue to apply for those licenses in a state that is being degraded and eroded from a conservation standpoint by an administration and animal rights extremists that are agenda-driven. But the out-of-state people see value in this. They're either applying for points, they're hunting here, they have hunted here, they want to hunt here, they vacation here, they know people here, have relatives here, they ski here. They have buy-in into this system, and that's why they're willing to support us in the capacities that they are so far. But they want to be part of a victory. And to do that, then they could turn around and claim, I was part of the efforts in Colorado.
Yeah.
And they helped turn around and defeat it in Colorado. And look, now Wyoming is emulating that, or Nevada is emulating that, or they're coming to Ohio and we can emulate that. Or in Florida, I say this a couple times a week, it seems like, on the damn podcast I'm doing. The old guy, 76 years old, that turned around and writes me a handwritten cursive note out of Florida back in December and gives me a $250 check. And he says, I'm never going to make it to Colorado. I wish I could someday, but I hope there's somebody like you and your organization to come here and defeat the enemy when they're trying to take gator trapping away. The value that people see is it's not centric to Colorado, except for the issue is here right now. The value of what we see is people saying enough is enough, and we need to turn around and help our brothers in Colorado because of the wording and the way this is defined. And there's not anything you can do to stop it in any one of these states, whether it's ballot initiative or otherwise, if there's a statutory precedent on trophy hunting and how wildlife can be managed within the confines of the United States, but probably in Canada too. Look at what they've done at every single level up there. It's the North American model of wildlife conservation. It's not the United States.
No, literally a different country, but I mean, they got some stuff going on. Our Canadian brothers and sisters.
Yeah, it's just opened up a can of worms, don't we?
I know. I got to be careful what I say. I got to another podcast.
Yeah, yeah. And I work frequently with Barry. I did with Ellery. Still have a great friendship with her. I dealt with Keeley a little bit before she was transitioned out. Andy Traherne and I are great friends, and Andy moved on to another a venture, back there. But I tell you, without organizations like CSF and even Sportsman's Alliance and all the other NGO, the NGO community itself, without that, we don't have a leg to stand on.
So that great segue. I was going to go somewhere else, but since you brought it up, you with the help of Ellery, who you mentioned, you guys stood up the Colorado Wildlife Conservation Project.
Yep.
It consists of 18 NGOs within the state that work with the Legislative Sportsman's Caucus there, or try to work with it in Colorado. Start building on that with the conversation. How has that organization been to fight campaigns like this and some of the other ones in the state?
Well, I'm the vice chair of that, and I helped formulate that with the chair, Gaspar Pericone, and I think we're up to 21 or 22 organizations right now.
No, okay.
But the hardest thing about that coalition is it's not a bona fide organization. It doesn't have a C3 or a C4 or C6 status. And there's reasons for that, but that also allows for some ineffectiveness and inefficiencies as well, because while you got bylaws and you got a charter and you try to adhere to a 51% margin of commonality as opposed to neutrality, that's a great opportunity for us to engage, but it doesn't have enough teeth to be able to engage appropriately. And the reason being is because they're all individual C3 organizations that collectively or individually don't have the tax status to do what a C4, like what we are with CRWM. Now, we're part of that coalition, but we do a lot of things for and in tandem with that coalition that they can't do individually.
Okay.
So while I will prop it up, and if any of my counterparts hear me say this, then I challenge them to counter. But it's great to have, but it's not exceptional because it only has so much bandwidth that it can actually work within. It has sideboards that it can work within. Now, CRWM's got sideboards too, but in a different capacity, because we can raise money. We've got political advocacy at the Capitol. We've got 3 full-time lobbyists at the Capitol that work with us. The coalition doesn't have any lobbyists.
Sure.
The coalition has representatives from each one of the organizations that might go speak on behalf specific bills or pieces of legislation or commission issues from a organizational standpoint within their own sideboards. But it's tough to say that we are the biggest, baddest, meanest, fastest, strongest kids on the block, because we're not. But it's the best that we've got, and it's the best that I think that other states could figure out a way to emulate. But I would caution and urge any other states to do that, to make sure that you formulate an organization that has a lot more teeth and less bark, so to speak.
I think the value of having an advisory council like this is at least all the organizations can get on board with a couple priorities and articulate those, and then groups like yours and other individuals can try to see that through. But it's not like the beagle guys have a thought, the pheasant guys have a thought, the turkey guys have a thought. It's what it does is what we were just talking about at the beginning of this, is making everyone care about everyone's problems, everyone's challenges. And, this year we're going to support the beaglers. This year we're going to support the bear houndsmen. This year we're going to support the trappers for, whatever they're coming after, their Kana bears or their leg holds, whatever it is.
Footholds.
Thank you.
Footholds.
I'm dating myself.
I'm a trapper now. Come on, it's foothold.
Foothold, the restraint device. Now, so there is huge value in that. I understand what you're saying about the fundraising, and
yeah, we don't have a checking account. I mean, the individual organizations have to do their own things and commingle their efforts of however they can. And CRWM is playing the mediator, moderator, litigator, arbitrator on fundraising, gathering to be able to disperse for appropriate measures. And what I would say though is that on more than one occasion through that coalition, and it sounds like I'm beating us down. I'm trying to give anybody else an opportunity to listens, that if they're considering doing something, don't go down the same rabbit hole. Try to address some of those things before they come up. I know every organization has its own wheelhouse and its mission and its task at hand. But more often than not, we have heard, well, you just have to understand, when we get into the controversial stuff, we will probably take a backseat neutral position. And I'm thinking, well, it depends on what is controversial. Is it controversial? Could it just because you oppose something, or is it really controversial that it goes in disalignment with your mission?
Right.
Which I understand. But, look, I'm an old school guy. I'm 60 years old, and most of our counterparts aren't. They're 20s, 30s, 40s, and in their 50s. And there's a few that are my age or older, but not very damn many of them. But I'm still willing to go toe for toe, punch for punch, and tit for tat. And I'd like to know, if I'm going to go in a bar fight and we're going to get into one, I'd like to know who the hell's behind me.
Yeah.
And when you're part of a coalition and you expect that you're part of that coalition to be formidable for the coalition efforts, to be steadfast, I think we could all agree on the North American model. We could all agree on science-based wildlife management. We could all agree on hunting and fishing as the primary tool for game management. We could all agree on a lot of different things. We should be able to cast aside our differences and agree on those things, and whatever comes down for those things, controversial or not, we should be able to turn around and stay the course with that. And if we haven't, are we really a coalition?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just don't have the numbers to divide like that. It's just not not practical.
No.
You can't get over any 50-yard line
Nope.
if you're just siloing the crap out of each other, you know,
Yeah.
and we do that everywhere. I mean,
everywhere. And that's the thing that, I did a deal on, I'm dating myself that, I didn't have an Instagram account until December. So talk about monkeying a spaceship. And now I'm all over freaking Instagram to the point where people are like, man, you're an Instagram sensation. I'm like, no, I'm a flipping idiot.
I found you. Well, it
Yeah, I
worked.
got to find you. But I did a deal that got like 180,000 views. And I was like the Taylor Swift with a beard or something. And all I said
T-shirt, man.
was, yeah. And all I said was, I'm a sportsman.
Yeah.
And then I gave the reasonability and the logic of what a sportsman is and why we should do it. The people that have outreached to me at this point in time about, I'm a sportsman. I know a sportsman. I bow hunt, but I'm a sportsman. I trap hunt, but I'm a sportsman. I'm a houndsman. I'm a sportsman. There's a component there that we ought to be able to capitalize on. Because if you look at Mark Duda with responsive management, he doesn't turn around and through his studies, he'll segregate different aspects of what we do. But they have the sportsman's voice. You guys are the Congressional Sportsman's Foundation. We have Sportsman's Warehouse, for crying out loud. We have Sportsman's Alliance. That's the sportsman coalition that we fall under on all single aspects of what we do. We ought to classify ourselves as sportsmen and women. And everything that we do go underneath that umbrella, but we have a tendency to segregate ourselves unintentionally, and that divides and conquers ourselves intentionally from our opposition because they don't see alignment. They don't want to screw with Sportsman's Alliance. They don't want to screw with CSF, Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. We have the opportunity. We're having a day, April 18th, Barry Snell's coming out. It's Sportsman's Day at the Capitol. Why? Because it's in coalition with the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. Now, we've had people say, you need to change that to sports persons or sports people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you can change what you want, but this is an organization name and it's trademarked or copyrighted or whatever. We're not changing anything. Yeah. We're not changing the date or the time or anything unless they agree along with us, but we're damn sure not going to change their name. And I'm a sportsman, you're a sportsman, and I haven't run into a woman yet that didn't classify herself as a sportsman. And if you classified herself as a sportswoman, she was fine with that, but she still felt part of the sportsman community.
Right.
And I think that we have to figure out a way to find those commonalities, stick with those commonalities, and make sure we hold the line, because our opposition is going to segregate us and divide and conquer us unintentionally or intentionally, but let's not do it to ourselves.
Have you found any disparagement between demographics, and when I guess dial that in is more like age groups? And you mentioned it earlier. You had that gentleman from Florida handwrite you a letter and send you a check. It feels like, at least in my experience, you have the older boomer generation, as it's put, that are, biology's taking over, man. So there's less and less of them every year, and we talk about that a lot. But the passion seems to be there. And then, me as a very late Gen Xer, and earlier Gen Xers seem to get it, but the younger generation, unless it's very chic, or they're just all about that self-sufficiency lifestyle, that locavore movement from a few years ago, like the large majority of them always seem to think someone else will take care of it for me. Someone else will do. Well, who is someone else? It can't be you all the time. It can't be CSF all the time. We'll do our damnedest, but it takes more voices. It takes more people having that skin in the game, showing up for a hearing, showing up for a Sportsman's Day at the Capitol.
Well, I will tell you that, that through Instagram, it gives you the data and the statistics of your account and engagement and age demographics and genders and everything. And I'm seeing something that I really have paid attention to over the last 8 years that I've gained knowledge on because of my involvement in different boards and commissions. But the target audience that we're looking at, both sides of the fence, in my opinion, is 18 to 34 years old. But I've been on it for 7 years, and we've been saying 18 to 34 years old for 7 years.
Yeah, so they're all
okay.
old.
So if they were 34, now they're 41.
Yeah,
the ones that are 18 now were 11, and from, I think it's indoctrination of policies and practices and procedures, but also the visual optics and the message that you create. I'm going to try to show you something here and see if it comes up well enough.
Yeah.
Okay, that was at the sports show. This kid stood in line for about 15 minutes while I was BSing with older guys and younger guys. And he came up and he said, I want to buy a hat. And I said, well, why do you want to buy a hat? And he says, because I want to help the cause. And he said, but would you mind signing it? And I'd like to get your autograph and I'd like to get a picture. This kid's 11 years old. I had 75-year-old men. I had 50-year-old women with kids. I had, 23-year-old women coming up to the booth that were either houndsmen or sportsmen or fishermen or whatever. And I could tell you right now that we are crossing the gap of a demographic that I didn't think was possible. I'm an old gray-haired 60-year-old white guy, and I believe in all sorts of forms of recreationists to come out there at any level if they want to participate in conservation. And I'm seeing such a diversified coalition of individuals that are reaching out from groups that people wouldn't expect, whether it's age, whether it's gender, whether it's race. I can tell you wholeheartedly that what I saw 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, or 2 months ago is about the same. It's just that now they're coming out of the flipping woodwork because they see that somebody is actually willing to turn around and prop that flag up because they've deemed themselves as sportsmen. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to solve the world. We're going to turn around and, create this giant monumental momentum-driven effort that's going to capitalize on every single level. But there's something to be said where we're going. I've traveled in 6 states. I've done 7 different trade shows. This is my 58th podcast since the the latter part of December. I've been on the Ranella live show. I was on the Ranella podcast. I was on Newberg's podcast. I'm trying to work with multiple others that have reached out at different levels. The demographic is not 77. It's not 35, and it's not 12 or 11 like this kid. It's everything in between. But the interesting thing about it is what I consider to be more of a generational backcountry hunters and angler type thing, where it's more about coalescing about public lands and access. And, some of these kids that you see now, they're built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they do this thing for a recreational deal so they can prepare for the hunt. Different than what I ever did, but it's a cross section of all sectors of our community that is coming together. That some wear camo, some don't. Some wear flannel, some don't. Some like the backpack, some don't. Some are 18, some aren't. Some are 75, some aren't. But they're coming together because I think there's an extremist level in society that they see that is starting to corrupt their individual privileges and or rights in some occasions. And we have propped up an opportunity for them to engage on something that maybe they never even knew that was happening in the West. But if we can promote that ideology that what happens in the West can happen in the Midwest and what can damn sure happen in the East, and if you can get them to buy in, you talk to 1,000 people, if 20 pay attention, maybe those 20 will talk to another 20, and you talk to another 1,000, and pretty soon, just like what you said, you see my dumb freaking face all over the place. You look at what there is that we can capitalize on. I think there's an opportunity to start a movement, not just with me, or not with just CRWM or CWCP. It's not Colorado-centric. I think all the organizations can capitalize on it. They can maneuver into a position to engage on it, and they can mechanize and weaponize on it to where we become the most formidable, indefensible opposition that the anti-hunting community and animal rights extremists have ever seen.
My mind's like going 5,000 different directions. So much I want to comment on that. So I have here.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm just trying to prioritize what I want to do in the remaining time that we have. So I had here on one of my notes, you started leaning into it, is that have we been about it the wrong way as far as the sporting community? And what I mean by that is our messaging and the story we're trying to tell. It always feels like we're always up against it. We have the hardest time trying to tell our story in a manner that people can appreciate or at least stay indifferent to what we do, those that don't participate. Trying to tell them, well, this isn't so bad. And you quote the North American model and you quote, the turn of the last century, where we were, where we've been and how we come. And you look at the Rocky Mountain elk, and you look at the wild turkey, the two greatest conservation success stories in the last 130 years, blah, 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 blah. This is all great stuff to us. But I think the bigger thing, I was thinking about this morning, so I'm going to ask Dan this. I think it's the freedom aspect. I think that's the bigger story, the meta story we need to be focusing on, because every time, they attack a commission or a board and they try to seat obstructionists and anti-hunters, that we deal with the East and we deal with the West. And like you said, that stuff moves in and no one's immune from it. And they try to take this away or they chip away at that. It's not even half the country has right to hunt, fish, trap amendments on their state constitutions. So it's still very much a privilege in half the country that can, be legislated away or through, seating these obstructionists on Fish and Game Committee boards and commissions that can be regulated away. I feel like right now, like you said, the atmosphere is primed. It feels like at every turn our freedoms are getting taken away. It's more expensive to live. Life is just not what it was 4 or 5 years ago. And then things like this, to communicate that, look, they're taking this away, my ability to go out and source my own food, because that is a real motivation for, I would say, the vast majority of us. There's the adventure part. There's all the romantic stuff that comes with it. At the end of the day, I'm putting food in my refrigerator. I'm not paying $10 for chuck ground. I'm paying my license fees and putting in my effort for the most quality, non-RNMA spiked freaking protein. Like, it's all natural, and that moves my needle. If someone starts taking my freedom and my ability to go out there and source that food to provide a very, at a minimum basic for human living for me and my family, I got a problem with that. And I need other people, my neighbors, that have a problem with that if it affects me directly, but the lack of freedom will ripple out. And I think that may be the bigger.
Yeah, I think that there's a component of lack of freedom, but there's a component of buy-in to today's environment when they talk about sustainable use and utilization of our natural resources, climate change, water, air, whatever. And wildlife is part of that. I said this morning on Cliff Gray's podcast that I did because he was in the Caribbean, which he was getting ready to go spearfishing, I think. And I told him, I said, for us to be able to find a commonality with people that don't necessarily see along our lines, they're not anti-hunters. They're just not hunters. What is the benefit of hunting and fishing and conservation to them? And they get a benefit off of it, whether they go out and kill it or not. The benefit of it is to them. And so from I won't say studies, but from my engagement of some things where there was studies, providing the benefit of what you do to somebody else recognizes that they don't have a problem with you doing what you do because they benefit off of it. And so, sound wildlife populations and stewardship and management of our natural resources are things that they benefit off of, whether it's the land, whether it's the water, whether it's the air, whether it's the forest itself, whether it's the wildlife. We pay into that they don't. And I've had conversations with people at different levels, either in meetings or out of meetings, sometimes in the field. This is my personal experience, but even conversations that I've had with guys like Shane Mahoney or John Organ or Priya Nanjapa and the North American model conversation that comes up that you can't convey. There's so much Wikipedia stuff out there. You can't give that to somebody in a minute and a half soapbox speech. So you relate it to how it affects them. And I saw a gal walking out of the woods one time, probably 10 years ago, and she had 2 pine cones and some flowers. And I was taking a bow hunter in on a guided trip. And she was despised. We were despised. We were despicable because we were bow hunting. We were taking things off the land. And I just looked at her and I said, what do you have in your hands? You're no different than what we are. It's just that we decide that we're going to do something through a license purchasing program and then pursue what we decide to pursue. And then if we harvest it, then consume it and utilize all aspects of it. That's when I said, and I said this to Shane Mahoney, I mentioned wild harvest. I said, we are no different from each other. what I do benefits you and what you do benefits me just by the pure use of the use of public lands and stewardship. Now, I pay for mine. You're not paying to collect pine cones, but I'm paying to turn around and go in and try to harvest a deer or an elk. Shane started the Wild Harvest Initiative. He didn't start it off of me. It was just common practice because people of like minds think the same. We're talking about wild harvest, medicinal plants. Maybe it's elk antlers so they can get, chandeliers or cut them up in dog chews. Maybe it's firewood. Maybe it's pinyon nuts. Maybe it's mushrooms. It's wild harvest, and it's no different than what we do for game management. And Shane has convinced the world that they're willing to listen. And if you look at the statistics and the data and the studies that have been compiled, without wild harvest, we cannot sustain the planet's people off of domestic production. There's a wild component at all levels that come in. They're in the Whole Foods all over Africa. There's not a natural grocers all over Russia or the Middle East. You go to the South America. Yeah, there's a food component that goes into it, but there's a hell of a lot of wild harvest. Now, I'm not saying wild abuse and extirpation like what happens in some unregulated countries or like what we had here at the latter part of the 1800s to the first part of the 1900s. I'm talking about regulated, consumptive harvest that people need to find commonality. And when you explain that in a couple minute, back and forth soapbox speech, if nothing else, they think about it because it affects them. And I think that that's the thing that the NGOs and that our community has done a very piss poor job over the years of being able to convey that message about wild harvest, about sustainable wildlife resources, who pays for it, how we get it, and the fact that everybody benefits off of it. I mean, if all the major NGOs, and I'm getting tired of naming them because I'm afraid they're going to turn around and come out and not support us because of our efforts on this particular issue. But if all the major NGOs, the big acronym groups, would come out with a comprehensive education campaign, not a political campaign, education campaign to talk to the general public, not on Pursuit Channel and Outdoor Channel, not on some hunting show or some DVD or some podcast or what. Talk to the general public about conservation, about stewardship, about wildlife management. We could start to change the mentality, maybe not in a 2 or 3 or 4 year period, but we're already 30 years behind the 8 ball as far as I'm concerned. So you better ramp it up in some capacity because as you start, the opposition is going to turn around and put more money and infuse it more into the system to degrade and erode everything you're doing. I think it's a missed opportunity. And I think that if we don't capitalize on that, by the time that I'm 70 or 75 years old, we better have a better game plan in place or it won't last the next 100 years like it was the last 125 years.
Yeah, and to your point, even putting that picture up of that young man seeing you at the expo, I mean, he's certainly an outlier on the bell curve. I mean, they're inundated. Our kids, I mean, I got middle school age kids. They've been inundated with this crap since preschool, since Jump, in the books and the Disney and the Nickelodeon, all this stuff that they consume. It already starts working on them. And, unless somebody in their direct ecosystem goes out and participates in any of this, they give you the side eye look like you're a caveman. And that is all by design, all by this programming. So one of our top priorities is to get Hunter Ed or some variation thereof in the school systems at that young age and expose them. And just like you said, to tell that story of wild consumption and it's not all about like killing a deer, but mushroom identification, things like that, and then bringing home. And as they maturate through their, K through 12, that obviously that education steps up and gets more intense. But that's, as you well know, that's a big challenge because as soon as you say, we want to see this go in the public ed system, you immediate pushback, guns this, weapons that, and it's they suck all the oxygen out of the room, and you don't even have a real great opportunity to make your case. And even when you do, man, they are ready. But I mean, something like that it would be a great way to combat a lot of this and at least give some exposure at the young age so these kids can start making up their minds or at least start being inquisitive and ask questions.
Well, I mean, look at what we recently did. We introduced wolves through a ballot initiative. We put 10 wolves on the ground last December. And in November, before we were going to do that, the governor laid out a naming plan for the wolves that we were going to turn around and to let the kids do it through different school programs. And so they named the 10 wolves. How would you like to be the?
Which one was the one that just wrecked that calf the other day?
Well, now there's two of them. They had another one yesterday. So we got Grand County and Jackson County where we have wolf depredations that are confirmed. But how would you like to be the rancher that was trying to legally protect his livestock under the 10J rule, and he shot Maverick, or he shot Martin, or whatever the kids named him? I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's the anthropomorphization that you see from this mentality that's agenda driven to indoctrinate kids into this process. There's a wolf research place here. That's not a wolf research place. It's a freaking place where there's captive wolves, and they're trying to teach people about nature and wildlife. And they don't teach them about conservation and nature and wildlife. They teach them about this is what is out there, but it's not what's out there. Wild wolves don't come up and lick and kiss you. You can't sit with wild wolves in a pen that you paid for to be able to turn around and go interact with them. Yeah, they howl and they eat and they crap and they breed and they do all the other stuff that wolves do, but they're also domesticated to the point to where they're in this confinement that you can go interact and engage. But they've convinced the general public that this is what the wolf population is. And so the duping of the general public thinks that, well, if we're going to put this out there, I'd like to hear a howl. I'd like to see wolves. But ask them if they really want to watch a pack of wolves rip the guts out of a cow elk when she's turning around and having a calf. That's the realization. Ask them if they agree that wolves should be able to be, at their leisure, go into a livestock production for domestic livestock and be able to kill at leisure because they're hungry. I don't think people realized at the time of the repercussions or ramifications of them checking the box of yes or no. And I'm hoping that when we get to November 5th of this year, that there's enough negative publicity, there's enough consternation that there's been created, that they look at it and go, maybe we shouldn't check this box for us to be able to vote on ballot box biology. Maybe we ought to just turn around and either leave it blank or check, no, we're not supporting ballot box biology and wildlife management decisions by the hairdresser in Denver, or the auto mechanic in Grand Junction, or the florist in Colorado Springs. Let's leave it to the experts. The 350 experts that we have in Colorado Parks and Wildlife, out of 1,000 employees, they got 350 bona fide wildlife biologists. Let's leave it up to them to do our wildlife management. And if we teach our kids that those are the experts, that we should leave it up to the experts, I think that the kids would have a better perspective when they get older to make decisions about how the ecology side of things works, and how the economic side of the ecology of things works, and how the stewardship and management side of ecology, and also realize that you and I and those kids and everybody else is part of that ecosystem. We are part of that process. We are not looking outside of it, looking into the bubble like a terrarium. We are part of that system, and we should be considered to be part of that, just like you talked about food source. Maybe it's just recreation. Maybe it's just knowing for the fact that it's out there and it's being appropriately managed and taken care of. We are part of it. The kids need to recognize that. And I think that indoctrination has separated us, that we are bad, we are evil, we should leave all things alone. And I don't know what the hell we're supposed to survive on anything, because they don't want us to have domestic production. They don't want us to go harvest anything wild. They don't like it when we turn around and turn soil into something to grow it. So I'd like to know how the hell we're supposed to survive if we're part of it, and if we're trying to manage it appropriately to where it remains for the next 200, 300, 400, 1,000 years.
We try to riddle this out on a recent program of ours. We were highlighting what I talked about earlier about the boards and commissions being hijacked at the legislative level and trying to seat obstructionists on there. And so we're like, okay, so let's say in a very terrible world, you get your way. And all of you get on there and you get to have your little preservationist meeting and you get to outlaw hunting and fishing. Then what happens now? Because you're never going to do this rewilding, whatever this movement is. You're never going to be able to get it back to the way it was, because all the landscape, and even out by you to an extent, especially over here, is so fragmented. You're not going to bulldoze all the houses. You're not going to have all these successional forests grow back up. And most of them don't even want to manage for that. They want old growth stands so they can take long, pretty walks through worthless timber. What does that yield you? In 20 years, you're going to have bupkis. And they don't want to recognize that fact. They just want the short, immediate gain and pat themselves on the back. Let's say, look what I did. And then to your last point about the kids, all they've seen is this meme, this walking meme of the FUD hunter. Well, whether it's a Disney animated show, there's a hunting one. I forget what the hell it is, but there was a couple hunting cartoons, and the hunters are made to look like absolute FUDs. And then, a show I actually enjoy and laugh at, Parks and Recs, Ron Swanson, great character. Most of us actually like, and they make him look like a FUD in a couple episodes. He goes out there and hunts. So, I mean, it's just constantly perpetuated. And I don't know how you combat it, because there's just such an effort on the other side, and it's so well funded. And it eventually, the biggest thing you got to do is get out there and vote. And that's what we keep saying. You got to put a bow on this whole thing. You have to have skin in the game. You got to show up, whether it's the 8 hours. You're spending 8 hours on friggin' TikTok and Instagram, and it goes by like that. You really could take that time, make it valuable once a quarter, show up to a commission meeting, have your voice heard, or at least listen and observe what the hell is going on. I don't know, man.
Your legislators need to know who you are.
Have to.
They need to know that you're a constituent. They need to know that you're a business owner, or that you recreate like this, or you participate in this activity, or that you drive this type of vehicle, or that you like to burn wood, or you like to have electric stoves, or whatever the hell it is. They need to know that. The commission needs to know. Parks and Wildlife commissions, the game and fish commissions, wherever you might be. They need to know that you are concerned with the decisions that are made, and that you want them to support the facts and the data and the statistics. And while I'm on that, I mean, I say this often. If our agency, our game and fish agency, our Parks and Wildlife agency came to us and said, we've got a problem with bighorn sheep populations, or moose populations, or coyote populations for that matter, and we don't know what we're going to do, so we recommend not harvesting in these geographical areas, or we're going to decrease the harvest. If there was a science that would back that because of their study or their findings, the sportsman community that I know, that I'm a part of, would be the first to turn around and raise their hand and say, what can we do?
That's exactly.
How do we fix this? How do we address this? Look at what we did with chronic wasting disease, for instance. Look what we've done with blue tongue. Look what we've done with rabies, tularemia, hantavirus, histoplasmosis. It doesn't matter. We come out because we're concerned about the wildlife just as much as we are about the people and the resource. We want to come to the rescue. We provide more funding. We provide more volunteerism. We provide more conduits of some sort of engagement to make sure that the passion that we have for that is what we instill. Now, that being said, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, for instance, last year had something like 4,700 volunteers, totaling some ungodly amount of, millions of hours of volunteerism that turned into millions of dollars if you had to pay somebody. If we have that sort of volunteerism for actual fun, boots on the ground stuff in state parks, or in wildlife research, or in game checks, or in trash pickups, or fence cleanups, or whatever, if we had those same people that would give us 8 hours per year to participate in the decision-making process, not the active engagement part of it, 8 hours per year, 2 hours one day, 2 hours the next, maybe 4 hours one day, maybe 8 hours combined. Not for a function or an event where you go, pin the tail on the elk and turn around and throw horseshoes and turn around and do banquets and fundraisers. I'm talking about dealing with the people that are making the decisions on our behalf, whether we're there or not, or whether we voted for them or not. If we did that, on top of some volunteerism that we're so passionate about, we would provide such a component of logic and reasonability to the decision-making process that HSUS and Wild Earth Guardians and all the other acronym groups that are out there trying to take our stuff away would wonder, what the hell kind of hornet's nest did we slap out of the tree? Yep. But when you go there and there's 5 guys testifying.
5 of the same guys.
5 of the same guys?
Yeah.
My dumbass half the time. When you go there and there's 12 of the same people that show up to a different board meeting or a commission meeting.
Yeah.
There's the same name guy is on 8 different boards, like what I've done in the past. We've had plenty of people that turn around and respond, reply, and apply. If we did any of that, we would be so institutionally integrated into the decision-making process. It's not that we would get our way and impose everything. they would see that there's people out there that care about this wholeheartedly, as opposed to just buying a license, buying your qualifying tag, and then watching things go willy-nilly as they might, depending on who has the grease to oil the wheel, and you just start taking things off the table. I don't think that we're in that position right now. I think that our community doesn't want to take things off the table any longer. And I think that when we are victorious come this year on this specific issue, it's going to open up that hornet's nest that I mentioned, and other organizations, entities, and states that have already reached out to say, how can you help? What can we do? What do we need to do to formulate this plan? Or how do we enact that strategy? It's turning heads, and it's getting people's ideas aligned with it's time to put up an effort to defend this stuff, not just from a conservation standpoint, but from a legitimate regulatory, litigious engagement standpoint, because it doesn't matter how much you do the conservation-wise if you can't turn around and have the participation and engagement from a recreation-wise or an avocation-wise. We're just going to have a bunch of open space down the road, because open space with no wildlife on it is just, it's not wildlife habitat. It's just open space. So I'm just hoping that we can build up enough of an armament, talk to our guys, our community, have them help fund us to where we have enough of an armament and a war chest built up to where when November 5th comes along, we've already done the 3 months of preseason and the playoffs and all the other stuff to get to the point where we come out and go, see, told you so. We were right. Not only could we pull it off, we could actually accomplish it on behalf of everybody.
And it doesn't take a lot. Like, here's the inside baseball, ladies and gentlemen. 5 to 10 angry emails or phone calls to a state representative or a state senator really shakes their tree, because they just don't get it that much. And just the fact that they are known to district constituents, and those constituents, again, 5 to 10 of you, just make the angry phone call. We got to pay attention.
And I want to preface that do an angry phone call as a concerned constituent, not as a tirade, rant and raving, unprofessional idiot, because that'll go on deaf ears and they push the mute button. But I've had people that are some of the most articulate, could be well-spoken individuals in the world that show up to a commission meeting, and you just pull your hair out when they get up and speak and go, oh, for crying out loud. I mean, you didn't help yourself. You damn sure didn't help us. But if we do that, we can actually make a significant difference at other levels that maybe you don't have to fight a commission level. Maybe you don't have to fight a legislative level, and hope to God you don't have to fight a ballot initiative level because of the expense, the time, the effort, the intestinal fortitude, and the debilitating component of this whole measure that we're having to deal with is it's not insurmountable, because I'm convinced that we're going to win, but we need the support of everybody to be able to do that, because our team needs to be very, very strong and steadfast, and we need to have a lot of backup players, reserve players, because I think we're going to have some injured reserve players come along too. So we just try to do as best as what we can for right now, and not hope, but know that we're going to come out victorious in November.
Well, I'm glad to hear, you talking about the demographics and the people that have been reaching out to you are all over the map. That's great, because that means the message is falling on all the ears, and I hope it's just not a small segment of those younger folks. I hope more people are getting the message. I'm certainly appreciative of fellas like yourself and taking the lead and hard charging and trying to inspire people. Hopefully people will take this podcast 58 of 1 of 58 and share it about and put the link in their feeds and hear this. Maybe it's a different take on what you've already said on other podcasts. I hope there is something new and of value here, more from a policy standpoint. But continued success. We're obviously in the fight with you. Barry's going to follow you up here on this program and just touch on it from the CSF standpoint and the in-state coalition standpoint. But thanks so much for your time and trying to kick ass, man.
Well, I'm trying as best as I can to be able to turn around and hold a ragtag bunch of bad news bears together. And I just wanted to say, and if people have more information, go to SaveTheHuntColorado.com. They can get more information, the videos, and some of the stuff that we're doing to our community They can get the initiative language on there as well, so you don't have to dig through it through the Secretary of State's office. There's a donate button. We're damn sure take donations, but there's also 2 components on there that SCI is helping out tremendously on 2 raffles that we're doing. And SCI is running the raffles. You can get a chance at a Gunworks rifle with a scope package donated by Gunworks and the Salida Gun Shop, and another one with Whitaker Brothers Outfitting, and then Ovis Wildlife Taxidermy as an actual mountain lion hunt here in Colorado this coming November, and a full body mount. And so if you don't like donating to something, you can donate to the cause and actually get something in return. But all the money on the donate side, all the money on the raffle side goes directly to this issue, to this effort. So you would contribute to our efforts to be able to try to save the hunt in Colorado. So savethehuntcolorado.com, and we'd look forward to updating you guys at some point in time, or at least telling you about a victory if we don't get a chance to talk between now and November 5th. But we just appreciate the opportunity.
We will definitely follow up whatever way this goes, and hopefully there's no next steps. Hopefully we just can continue on, keeping on what you got there in the beautiful state of Colorado. Dan, thanks so much for your time, and thanks for the adjust, and we'll see you real soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Fred. Take care.
All right. Thanks again to Dan Gates for making the time coming on. It was obviously an enjoyable conversation, and both of us clearly very passionate. So batting cleanup, his name was dropped a few times. Assistant manager in the West, Barry Snell, joins us. How are you, sir?
I am great. How are you, Fred? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Glad you were able to come on. Dan spoke very highly of you, and obviously we got this craziness going on with the cats there in Colorado. He broke that down pretty well for us, but having you come on and giving the CSF perspective is certainly important. So if you would catch us up with what we're doing here at the Congressional Sportsman's Foundation, and how are you engaging legislators on the ground there?
Yeah, so CSF is right in the thick of it with Dan. We're pretty much in lockstep. We're doing everything together. There is no daylight between our position on this issue and our caucus. They are fully invested and firm believers in scientific wildlife management, so it's real easy to communicate with them. Being that this is a ballot initiative that we're talking about here, they're kind of, it's not that like they're powerless, but they're a little bit disconnected from the process because it's kind of out of their hands. So it's mostly on us, the sportsman's community and the advisory council that we have in Colorado to kind of try and handle this problem. So CSF's role, we actually sit on the steering committee of what is called the CWCP, or Coloradans for Wildlife, and they're kind of like our advisory committee there. And they have, I don't know, probably a couple dozen, maybe 30 different partner organizations that we have, ranging from, the Muleys to National Turkey Foundation to anybody you can think of, RMEF, everybody's there. So CSF is on the
list. It's very, very impressive.
Yeah.
Mid-20s.
Yeah. So we're on the steering committee of that, and it's part of our role there. We kind of guide the response to how we're going to handle this and what we're going to do on our campaign moving forward throughout the rest of the year and try and beat this. So, we're neck deep in it.
Can you explain to because Dan, articulated, and rightfully so, that I think it's like half the country has ballot initiatives. So in states where you don't have that, you may hear this term, but, what the hell does it mean? Can you walk us through that process?
Yeah, so the ballot initiative here in California, Colorado, they allow for citizens to essentially amend their constitution and bypass the legislature. And the legislature can do it too. But Colorado has some of the unique rules that allow people to go directly to the ballot. So what is required of that essentially is they have to come up with whatever they want their issue to be. And the language has to go through a panel, a state panel that reviews the language and makes sure that the title is okay, that the language is okay. And the state panel, they don't really get to say yes or no on it. They just get to say this is good or this is bad. And if it's bad, it kind of gets kicked back to whoever is pushing this to revise, and then they can send it back in. But once it gets approved, Then it is on that organization to gather signatures, and they have to gather so many signatures. And assuming they can do that, then the issue goes onto the ballot. And then for the upcoming general election in November, the Coloradans will be free to vote yes or no. It's pretty much that simple.
Are they real signatures? Like a person has to physically sign a piece of paper? I know Dan said they have to be verified. So I didn't, in the world of ballot drop-off boxes and e-voting or whatever the hell's going on out there, I wanted to make clear to the audience that, this is happening one way.
Yeah, so the actual human being has to go out and gather the signatures from other actual human beings, and then the state will select some of those signatures to verify and make sure that everybody on there is an actual person that hopefully lives in Colorado.
Yeah, no, that's good, and it's good to know that that's happening. At least, if you're going to bring something up, you're going to have to work for it. And I think he said it was. I'll have to go back. It was like 150 or 180,000 signatures that they needed to get.
Yeah, 150,000 signatures. So it's a pretty high mountain to climb.
Yeah. Do we have any insight of where they're at in that process, or is that held pretty? I would think that would be public, no?
Yes and no. I mean, we have some idea how it's going. I will say that it doesn't seem to be going super well for them. To what degree, and I probably shouldn't get into. We are trying to be strategic and tactical about this, and conduct our own opposition. But we do know, we've done polling, we've done a lot of research. We know there's not a heck of a lot of popular support for this ballot measure as it is. So one of the theories, of course, is that they may be running into some difficulties and people even agreeing enough to sign the petition. So that might be one of their problems. And of course, it's hard to collect 150,000 signatures anyway. Yeah. So, that's a monumental task for anybody who's doing it. So, we can't assume that just because maybe they're not, turning in massive numbers yet, that it won't pick up, that they won't get some more volunteers. We can't assume that. We can't rest. We got to keep fighting on this until the end.
You got to wonder between now and November, you just had, these wolves reintroduced in Colorado. Last week, one wolf attacked some livestock. And then I guess yesterday, Dan was telling me yesterday being April 8th, for listening to the podcast down the line here, another piece of livestock was attacked. So handful of wolves already doing damage. God forbid, one of these cats attacks somebody out there, outdoor recreating, not even hunting. The whole thing could be up in flames. I don't want someone to get hurt to make that happen. I want common sense to play itself out, and let's avoid these things because we have a management plan in place that is, blessed by the agency and the professionals on the ground there. But alas, here we are.
Yeah, and those same professionals are, will tell anybody who asks that the cat population has actually been rising. So there are more cats now than there have ever been. Certainly since we've been keeping data on those things. So just to stop scientific management of the big cats, we're going to run into problems. It's inevitable where somebody's, pet cat or dog gets taken, worse, maybe a child, maybe a human gets attacked. I mean, Colorado is often described as America's playground. A lot of recreation. People come from all over the country to go hiking, backpacking. We're setting some people up for failure, so for some real injury. And about the wolf depredation thing, it was a matter of time. I mean, everybody who was against it, we were like, this is going to happen. It's going to be a thing. And people didn't want to listen. But in a kind of ironic twist of fate, that is actually helping us out on this mountain lion issue because people are awake now. They weren't really paying quite as much attention as they were before the wolf reintroduction happened. And then as soon as that happened, that inflamed everybody across the state. And we got a lot more eyes on this and a lot more attention. So we certainly expect that that's going to factor into turnout on this ballot initiative in November. We got Sportsman's Day coming up. We're expecting more people than last year. So people are paying attention.
Yeah, critical for that Sportsman's Day coming up on the 18th of April. Dan touched on that as well, and definitely looking forward to that. I know you're excited about it, and that's hope for good weather, but that's a lot of boots on the ground, a lot of opportunity to shake hands, have some conversations and some serious conversations and, bring people, fast forward them to November and, what's got to happen between now and then.
Yeah, absolutely. We had over 500 people. It's hard to count people and, when they're kind of moving around, but we know we had at least 500 last year. Given the amount of enthusiasm and the volunteer support and whatnot that we're seeing this year, which is much greater than last year, we're expecting even more than 500. So we're kind of betting on 1,000. So we're making our plans around that number. The legislators are going to be running pro sportsman's resolutions in support of us at the same time. So this is a great opportunity for civic engagement. Come on down. You're going to be able to see and meet and talk to legislators that are involved in this fight, our caucus members. You're going to be able to talk to our industry partners, our NGO partners there who are helping us out. And, we're going to feed you too. We're going to be feeding you elk and all sorts of cool grilled stuff.
That sounds good. Anybody from our Legislative Sportsman's Caucus there in Colorado that we want to recognize for their good works?
Yeah, I would say that Perry Will is going to stand out. He's retiring. He's one of our caucus co-chairs. He's in the Senate. He's performed many years of good service to sportsmen in Colorado. He's been one of the biggest guiding hands on all these issues there. And sadly, we're losing him. He's running for another office so he can be closer to home and spend more time with his grandchildren and stuff like that, which of course is commendable. And we definitely wish him well. But we will be giving him an award, actually.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so we'll be presenting him with an award recognizing his service. I'd also have to call out, and this is circumstantial. I don't mean to leave Barbara McLaughlin or Mike Lynch out here, but Dylan Roberts also is a little bit of note lately. And that's circumstantial because we just had commission hearings here recently, and those go through the Senate. So both Perry and Dylan had the opportunity to stand up and go on record and really put our message out there, being in favor of scientific wildlife management, being against ballot box biology, so to speak. So I got to give props to Dylan here lately too.
No, it's vitally important to have those individuals that, I guess for lack of a better description, common folk. They're not part of CSF. They're not part of a 4-letter critter group or 3-letter critter group, right? That are just entrenched in this day in and day out, and that's how we get up and go to work. It's vitally important to have, even if you're a leader of a district, I mean, you're still at it. You're still fielding all these other problems, or you're trying to solve other problems, or be proactive on the day to day of everybody in your district of your state. So, to have them be poignant about it, make it a priority, it speaks volumes to their commitment, and it's greatly appreciated. We need it. We need the support everywhere we can get it.
Absolutely. And politicians kind of get a bad rap for sometimes talk out of both sides of their mouths, but not in this at all. I mean, they stood up in public, right there in front of God and everybody and said, these are the things that we believe in. These are our positions. And this is why we're voting the way we are. And it couldn't have been more clear. So definitely to be commended.
We started touching on it earlier with Dan, and I wanted to continue the line of thought. Our storytelling and our ability to tell the sportsman's story to citizens at large, obviously not the ones that are opposed to our heritage and our way of life and our traditions, but your neighbors that don't participate in any of this, but telling the story of our efforts, our money that we purposely pay to go out and recreate, and only on average 20% of us are successful. All right, every year we go out in the field and 80% don't come home with a fill tag. So they're just out there on the landscape, just like everybody else, enjoying it. And because of that community, our community, everyone else gets to go out there, ride their bikes, stand up paddle boards on the waterways, have access to those docks, those back end docks, all in the back of Sportsman. And I think that message, along with the message of freedom, being able to be free and go out to those wild places to harvest wildlife to feed your family, I think are two very important messages that the 80% roughly in the middle can probably get behind.
Yeah, and I'd add on that we're happy to do it. Not only does that story need to be told, but we're extremely happy to do it. We do not view it as a burden. when we advocate along these lines and bring these points up and we testify in our different states, it's something I know, at least myself, and I know some of our cohorts in CSF, we always are clear on this, and we're extremely happy to do this. We do not view this as a problem. We enjoy doing it, and we're happy to continue doing it. So, yeah, that's definitely a story that needs to be told.
And to another extent of that, the picture that's painted by the anti-crowd of us and this FUD memery that goes about, we love the resource. We love the animals. So much so that, Dan started touching on, and I'll continue the thought that if any game species was in trouble, wild turkey's perfect. I can speak to this all day. We have declines in wild turkey populations throughout the country, and turkey hunters will be the first one to throw their hand up and say, listen, if this gets too bad, let's adjust bag limits during the season. If we got a fall season and we think we need to turn that off for a while, let's go ahead and do that. We're the first ones to say, no. The resources is the priority here. We'll get back to doing what we do when it can recover, and we can help that resource out. And that is happening right now on the ground in many parts of this country. The turkey just being one example.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm Iowa born and raised, and pheasants was kind of our big claim to fame. Pheasants and whitetail. We have people come from all over the world to hunt pheasants here, and we had a few years in a row where we had a bad hatch, and the population has just plummeted. I mean, they went from some of the most abundant in the world to damn near endangered,
Wow.
And hunters, all the pheasant hunters in Iowa were glad to take a step back and say, we got to do what we got to do to bring this back up. And they brought some birds in from South Dakota, fortunately, and things are getting better now. So, yeah, we were the first to raise our hands and say, yeah, reduce the bag limits and everything, and we'll take a step back. We want these resources available. So, absolutely.
Yeah, and at the same time, when the call to action goes out, I mean, not tooting our horn, but I'm going to toot our horn. We're the first ones to step up as well with financial participation as well as volunteer hours. If there's habitat work that needs to be done so that these different species can thrive and become, have that carrying capacity on the landscape, be where it needs to be so that we can go out and pursue and manage, and there's a balance there. We're right there, ready to go. Volunteer army, whether we're good with a chainsaw or not. Damn it, we're there. And I don't see the anti-crowd volunteering like that, or putting a painting of pheasants or wild turkey in their house and celebrating those animals.
Right. Yeah. I wish Dan was still on because he'd be able to give exact numbers on this. But Coloradans volunteered tens of thousands of hours annually. I mean, there's thousands of volunteers that they don't get paid anything, and they raise their hand for CPW to go out and work in projects in the backcountry and just to make everybody's life better. So you're right. Volunteerism is definitely something that runs deep in our community.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of that at hand, and I hope with our efforts coupled with what Dan's organization's doing, and then the council you have there, as much as all those groups can do on their own, and then as a collective voice, I hope we're able to rally the troops and defeat this thing in November, and hopefully, through the process, it doesn't even make it there. Ideally, those signatures don't come to bear, and the public at large understands the farce that it is, and you don't want your kids getting attacked by cats. You don't want your family members getting attacked by cats. Shoot, we had cats out in the West just kill a young boy, and his brother was trying to save him the whole time, came back running for help, and he found his brother dead with a cat on him. That's the stuff nightmares are made of, and that's manufactured by the government not managing these species.
Right. Yep, exactly. It's we hope that, of course, they're not able to gather enough signatures to get it on the ballot. That's the biggest and the first hurdle that they have to cross to get it on the ballot, obviously. But if they do, we should be proud of the fact that we have a great team, and there are a lot of people willing to chip in not only their time, but their dollars to fight this. Our fundraising is very healthy on this issue right now. So if the worst case happens and it does make it to the ballot, we are pretty confident in our abilities to resist this and hopefully be victorious. So a lot of the antis, they can sometimes have an outsized influence in Denver. But once you get it out in the public, like a ballot initiative is, and the people get to have a vote, the balance of power kind of shifts back in our direction a little bit.
Good.
Average people see the nonsense that this is. So we got good messaging. We're on the right side of the issue. So we're pretty confident one way or the other that we're going to be victorious.
Let's hope those trends continue and your efforts are for the better. Grateful for having you, Barry. Thanks for making the time, and continued success, and way to go out there working everybody up and getting them fired up.
Appreciate it, and thanks for the opportunity. If anybody is in Denver or in Colorado on April 18th, please come out to the Capitol grounds. It will be easy to spot. It'll be the big crowd milling around out there. We've got free food for you, and that'll be starting at 11 a.m. and be going till 2 p.m.
Barry, what's the parking situation like? I know around the Capitals it gets tight, so when should people start showing up, and where can they find a place to rest their car?
Yeah, there's a lot of public parking.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you're probably got to pay for it. Denver is got a parking problem, just like all the big cities in the country do. But there are lots around, and you're just forewarning everybody listening that you're probably going to have to pay for it. But small price to pay for what we're going to get out of this. It's gonna be a good day of fellowship.
Yeah, it's gonna be for sure. So plan accordingly. Show starts at 11. If you got to walk a little bit, leave a little earlier, and don't miss a beat. Sounds like it's going to be a heck of a show. And hopefully in 2025, we'll take this show on the road and bring the people the sights and sounds of what sounds like an amazing event. Great, Jared. Great work, Barry.
Appreciate it. We'd love to have you next time, Fred. We'll look forward to it.
Heck yeah. Appreciate it. All right. We'll talk to you real soon.
Thank you, sir.
One more time, thank you so much to Dan Gates. Thank you to Barry Snell for joining me. An important story to be told for sure, and I'm glad we were able to bring that to you. Hopefully the updates we have as we work through the rest of the spring and the summer are positive for our community, for wildlife management, for common sense, and we can bring you some good updates from on the ground in Colorado. Lot there, lot to unpack. But I think the bigger message that needs to be taken away from this, common sense, which obviously we know is not so common these days, but common sense and trusting the officials, the professionals at the state agency, really needs to rule the day here. And when trained biologists, who a lot of them are species or in this case, probably fur bear, probably species specific, but in some states they're fur bearers, but their whole focus in their professional life is on these creatures. And they know them intimately. They know their habits. They know where they're at. They understand the balance on the landscape of what's necessary for healthy populations. What happens when the populations get out of hand, and there's too many of them on the landscape versus too little, and how that all works together. Both gentlemen, ballot box biology. That's a great bumper sticker, and it should have a big circle with a red line through it. No ballot box biology. I appreciate they have the right to do that, and they'll do their best, but this stuff shouldn't be decided. It shouldn't be decided in the legislature, and it should not be decided in the ballot box. It just shouldn't. That's the final say on that. So hopefully, like I said, we can bring you a good report before November. And if it gets that far, hopefully the people of Colorado will see it for the foolishness and the farce that it is, and either vote no enthusiastically, or just leave it empty, the box empty altogether, and move on. So I guess more to come. The story is not over there yet. And if you are in Colorado and you heard Barry talk about the event on April 18th, as this podcast drops, you got a little time there to plan for that. Go down there and enjoy it. Go meet your legislators. Holy smokes, we talk about phone calling and emailing all the time. Here is a prime opportunity. Go park your car, walk down the street, get there. It's going to be held right in front of the State House. Go shake hands, introduce yourself, find your legislator ahead of time, and go see if they're out there. Introduce them, let them know your passions, let them know your concerns, and chances are if they're at this event, they share those concerns, or they're looking for feedback and looking to be educated and know what the ideas and thoughts of their constituents are. It's a fantastic opportunity. Sounds like some great food and a lot of good fellowship and camaraderie from like-minded folks. So if you're in the area, go check that out. A lot of ground covered here. Thanks so much for hanging with us. I know this is probably one of our longer episodes we've had so far in the Sportsman's Voice podcast catalog of episodes, but an important one and then a good conversation. So if you're so inclined, find the link, share it in your social feed, send it around, let people hear directly from the people on the ground what's going on. And as always, subscribe where available, follow where available. If there's some 5 stars, please fill them in. If you like the show so much and you're inclined, leave us a comment. We like that too. If you don't like the show, but you're listening, just like the ballot initiative, just leave it empty and move on. Thanks so much for everyone who does listen to our weekly news report and the TSV roundup. Thank you everybody who shows up here every other Thursday for our feature show. We continue to get good positive feedback here. People are starting to find it. And I have to believe that's in part to those of you that are tuning in and making that available to people in your ecosystem. So please continue to do that. That's one of the best ways you can support this program, as well as CSF and getting the word out about who we are, telling our story and what people like Barry and some of the other guests we've had on from our team are doing and working tirelessly and with great effort to ensure our hunting heritage is preserved, our traditions are preserved, and that sound wildlife management and conservation practices continue to be the authority and not emotional, crazy arguments like we have here in Colorado. So with that, I will leave you all with happy thoughts, good tidings, turkey season well underway, and I'm not too far from it here in the Northeast, so hopefully have some good reports. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Tell us how your turkey season's going. Go on to our Facebook, Instagram, X account, and drop a message. Let us know how you're doing. Share some pictures. Love to see them. That's it. Thanks for hanging out with us. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.